Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. To paraphrase the old saw that personnel is policy, personnel in K through 12 is also curriculum. And that's part of what is being imposed upon kids in K through 12. So amid all the discussion of this book and that book, the teachers themselves, everywhere, not every teacher, but it's a issue virtually everywhere. Like Glencoe District 35, the West School in Glencoe. Meet fourth grade teacher Nathan Lyon. He has some recommendations. He happily posts on social media. In fact, his Instagram and social media accounts are all about this. All about making the classroom friendly for LGBTQ two-spirit plus kids.
All right, what's he doing?
Teachers, make your classroom LGBTQ plus inclusive from the very first day. This is tip number 8, so go back in my profile for other tips. I talked about assessing your language in another tip, but this one's all about like classroom practice. Are you lining up your students into boy and girl lines? And remember, when you do that, if a kid doesn't particularly identify strongly with either of those, it makes them have to kind of choose something that isn't true to them. So find other ways to line up or group your kids. It could be by their student numbers. It could be by their birthday months. Get creative, have fun with it, and you don't need to always center gender in your classroom.
Right.
They're 10.
You don't center gender by focusing on 10 and 11-year-olds identifying their fluidity. I mean, the idea too. I mean, just there's at least an 8-point plan that fourth grade teacher at Glencoe's West School has to make a classroom for 10, 11, 12-year-olds LGBTQ plus friendly. And it's funny, my classes growing up and going to St. Mike's and Wheaton and going to Bennett for high school, they were always LGBTQ plus friendly as well, as far as I knew, because we focused on other things. Like the stated objective of K through 12 education. It's remarkable, particularly given what we know about how well K through 12 government schools are doing in educating children per the state's report card. And of course in CPS, good God, 1 in 5 kids can read at grade level in CPS. Barely 1 in 6 can do math at grade level. And apparently we have an issue in CPS too. This was brought to our attention by Alderman Ray Lopez, who is the alderman for the 15th Ward. He's also a congressional candidate running in the primary against Chuy Garcia in Illinois' 4th. Alderman Lopez, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Dan and Amy, good morning. Happy Monday to you both.
Same to you. And so what's the problem in the CPS schools, or at least one of them in your ward?
So students came to my office last week to share with me a book called Soul Survivor, which was being given to high school students at an alternative school, the Englewood Excel Academy, to read during what they call their 15-minute Drop Everything and Read program, designed to help encourage literacy and encourage reading among the students. But this book, a highly fictionalized book, deals with corrupt police, hypersexual situations, and my personal favorite, refers to all Mexicans in Little Village in a very derogatory way that I'm not going to say on the air, but also, aside from using familiar stereotypes and slurs, accuses all Mexicans of just being cocaine-selling illegals. And this is what they were encouraging their students to read without any kind of context or without any kind of curriculum to explain how this is stereotyping their newest population, which is the Mexican community growing in African American communities like Englewood.
So develop this a little bit more. I mean, I'm not familiar with Soul Survivor. It hasn't bubbled up to our radar, at least mine, until this notice we got that you're having a press conference on the topic today with families of kids in the school. So is this sort of just like gratuitously stereotyping and denigrating Latinos, or is there a context that in the book that that provides some indication that some of the characterizations included in the book are inappropriate? You know what I mean? It's using this sort of to underscore characters that to speak like this as the bad guys.
No, I think this was designed to show and written and marketed as one African American gentleman's experience in dealing with police and the Mexican community in the city of Chicago. Because also included our efforts to show that all police officers are corrupt or on the take, and how they are able, and how members of the community are able to sexually exploit women, particularly young girls. But all of this was given to students to read only in certain classrooms, only in certain homerooms, because they didn't want it to be shared with classes that had Latino students in them. And they also didn't allow parents to see this book because the books were not allowed out of the school. Students were given the book and required to turn it back in because they knew how salacious the material was. And when parents approached the school, the academic coordinator for the building said, "This is about our people, and this is how we're going to educate our students about our people. This relates to our people." And being African American, the reference was quite clear to the parents and families who were trying to get an explanation. Now, I am thankful that the school immediately pulled the book the moment I called about it, but the very fact that they allowed such a piece of literature to be used and given out freely at the school without any kind of context, without any kind of academic curriculum to go with it, and without any full explanation to the parents as to what to expect or how to talk about this at home, shows me that there's just a very clear disconnect in CPS when it comes to their material.
Are other schools reading this book, though? Sorry for interrupting, but I mean, is this an isolated incident, or are kids given this book in other schools?
That's what we're trying to learn now, to see if this was just a local thing. But I think that what I'm trying to press upon parents is that you cannot assume that simply because the school that your children goes to is giving them something to read, that it is something that you want them to read or that they are being taught.
For sure. Oh, man. Yeah, well, that is an exclamation point. No, for sure. But so is the book, I'm just trying to get more of a handle on this. Is it essentially the same as some of the other race hustling tomes that, the honky is, every honky is a white supremacist who is stained with the original sin of slavery and their, blue-eyed devils and all that, and that's how you should consider white people as your antagonists? And is it sort of the same thing here? It's like Latinos are interlopers and bad people, and they exploit the black community. Is that sort of what I'm getting?
That's a fair assessment, and I think that when you see a community that is seeing a rise in a Latino population, when that is your go-to book, now you are intentionally pitting young students who otherwise would be just happy to be in class together. You're now pitting against them. Like they were learning Spanish profanity and using it down the halls because it was part of a book that they had been given, and the faculty unaware of what the word was and that it was being targeted at certain female members of the school simply because of their ethnicity is outrageous to me.
Right, and as you say, this is just like, here, read this, and it's just immersing yourself in this. We're not going to have a discussion about it. There's not going to be interaction. It's just sort of cheap indoctrination.
It's like giving the terrorist handbook to a bunch of teenagers and expecting them not to blow up things after they're done reading it. You wouldn't do that. And you need to provide context to impressionable minds so they understand what exactly they're reading, how it is written, from what lens it is being presented. Otherwise, all you're doing is giving them a handbook from which they can start discriminating and harassing their newest neighbors with the language in which to do it.
Yeah, but you know about Governor Pritzker's book ban. Like, no books can be banned in the state of Illinois.
And you know what? Fine, then don't ban it, but you don't have to encourage it to be shared in our schools at the same time.
Well,
or
right.
if you're going to have something that is very controversial, provide some context, explanation, and discussion on it. Because when the school was pressed as how are you presenting this to students, and so that they could understand the context, to quote the president of Harvard and Penn State, they're not.
Yeah, right.
There's no context. There is no context to it. You're just simply giving people very harassing language to read and telling them to have fun with it.
And that is and by the way, I mean, I know you're not attempting to characterize that way, but let's be clear. The Pritzker book ban, so-called anti-book ban, is a book ban. He is the book banner. He is not banning the banning of books. He is the book banner, because you will read these identitarian screeds, and we will exclude anything that would seek to uplift the kids' understanding of Western civilization. Pritzker and the teachers union, these are the book banners, because they exclude anything that is not consistent with their identitarian politics. Is that fair?
Just imagine as your monologue into the segment, you know, the teacher who wanted to make sure that you had LGBTQ triple plus rating in your classroom. Now, if this were a book that were harassing LGBTQ youth, and I say this as a gay man, I'm sure the outcry would be instantaneous. But because it deals with a group that everyone feels that they can marginalize equally, nobody seems to be alarmed by the fact that this is something that's been put to our students and their impressionable minds.
Have you had a conversation with Stacey Davis Gates and the CTU about this?
I believe she's busy trying to pay off her utility bills, so no, I haven't had a chance.
Oh, her too? I mean,
Yeah,
she and Brandon Johnson are running the mayor's office. They've never run a business. They have no idea what they're doing, way in over their head. And speaking of Brandon Johnson, and it's in your ward, the tent city that is no more. Tell us what's happening.
Well, the tent city is in the neighboring 12th ward, but it's 5 blocks from my house. Okay. And I'm thankful that Pritzker stepped up, but I think he stepped up to avoid state liability, because state, city, and county money were all being used to fund that place. But that's a $6 million debacle that we will not get our money back from. The mayor said our calls for resignations from the individuals who thought it was a great idea to put people on 6 inches of gravel above toxic soil. That's a good idea, and something not being serious. Clearly didn't read his 800-page report where the mayor's office and the departments responsible for trying to excavate the toxic soil literally forged documents just so they could dispose of the material they were removing from that site. That dirt that they were pulling out was so toxic, even landfills didn't want it. And the city, in essence, forged the core samplings at lesser contaminated locations on the site just so they could dispose of the material they were moving out. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
And we still don't have a plan. We still don't have a long or short-term plan. And he's still refusing to hold this administration responsible. We saw Mayor Rick Adams just said, don't expect anything from the federal government. They all just came back from Washington together. But yet it's, you know, a bed of roses as far as Mayor Johnson's concerned when it comes to the migrants. And it's only going to get worse for our finances. It's only going to get worse on our communities where the migrant asylum seekers are becoming more and more emboldened with what they can do criminally. I just got emails today of things going on at McGage Park. And there were just the amount of criminal activity and prostitution going on is astounding, and we can't get this administration to take it seriously. You know, they keep telling us to respect their human dignity. Well, respect our communities, respect our children, respect the neighborhoods who try to do the right thing, and now are dealt with an administration unwilling to hold these migrants accountable for what they're doing that's not legal or ethical or respectable in our communities. I asked the mayor to show me that he gave his 60-day notices to my Gage Park residents, and I have yet to get an answer because I think that policy was just for a headline and not something actionable from his administration.
So you're running in the primary against Chuy Garcia for that congressional seat, and I just wonder how you think that campaign is going, because it's such an interesting challenge. It's one we rarely see, where someone is challenging an incumbent Democrat socialist essentially from the center, as opposed to trying to get left of him, as if that was even possible. It's sort of, to me, interesting, because it's going to serve as sort of a litmus test to see whether or not there is a burgeoning majority of people that are commonsensical when it comes to the topics that we've covered, and that would certainly include public safety too. And I just wonder how the reception is, because Chuy's this sort of man of always in the Latino community and in the Democrat power structure, and you have your own base of support, and I just wonder, to some extent, what's happening in the Latino community, if there's political movement towards the center there.
Well, I think there's a definite split within the Latino community and the larger 4th District as a whole. Individuals are tired of having a congressman there who speaks a lot but doesn't do much for his residents, and in particular, someone who says that he's for immigration and for the immigrant community, while leapfrogging over them for the newest arrivals, while ignoring those who have been here waiting for a pathway to citizenship for decades or almost their entire life. What I think that we're seeing is that there's a schism particularly forming in the Latino community, those who support him and those who support me, those who believe in common sense, who are not afraid to say that they are voters of faith, that are voters who believe in safe neighborhoods. And then there's the other flip side, who want to enable criminality and make excuses for everything else that's going on in the world and write it off as just social ills or someone else's fault. And I think we're going to have a very robust discussion on this, because we are clearly two opposite ends of the magnet. And at a recent town hall we had nearly 95 people show up on a cold, rainy, sleety night who wanted to hear about solutions, who wanted to hear straight discussion without any sugarcoating on the problems and some of the solutions that we can bring from Washington. We know Washington is very dysfunctional right now, and people understand that when the House is nearly evenly divided, it'll be those few in the center that'll be the driving force of what happens out of the U.S. House of Representatives. Chuy is not going to be from the center. He's not going to be trying to unite those moderate individuals who are leading the charge forward. I am. And I know that in doing so, that's going to lift the entire district, if not the city and the state. And that's what people want right now. They're tired of excuses. They're tired of people trying to pontificate from their self-righteous perches while living under the do as I say, not as I do mentality. And very thankfully, we'll bring that reign to an end in the next 100 days.
All right, we'll be watching. It's going to be very interesting. Ray Lopez, 15th Ward Alderman, and as we were just discussing, Democrat challenger for the nomination in Illinois 4, a congressional nomination in Illinois 4. Ray Lopez, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.